The anniversary dinner was flawless. Soft candlelight flickered across crystal glasses. A violinist played somewhere behind them. 10 years of marriage, and Daniel had chosen the exact restaurant where he proposed. Across the table, Elena smiled. Calm, warm, loving, almost rehearsed. When the waiter stepped away, Daniel reached into his jacket. Not for the gift, for his phone. I need to show you something, he said quietly. Elena tilted her head. Now, you're scaring me. He slid the screen across the table. A bank notification. Transfer complete, $742,318.44 from their joint account to an account he had never seen before. For the first time that night, Elena didn't smile, but she didn't panic either. She simply leaned back in her chair and asked, "How much did you find?" Daniel felt something cold move through his chest. Enough to know my wife has been emptying our life. A pause. Then she said something that would fracture the next 10 years of his memory into pieces. You weren't supposed to see that yet. The violinist kept playing. No one else noticed that a marriage had just begun collapsing between the appetizer and the main course. And Daniel had no idea that discovering the money was the least devastating thing he would learn that night. Daniel had always described Elena as predictably kind. She remembered birthdays without reminders, called his mother every Sunday, left handwritten notes in his briefcase before important meetings. The kind of woman people trusted instinctively, which is why the transfer made no sense. You moved $750,000, he said. Why? Elena folded her hands neatly. No scene. Please. Her composure made his pulse accelerate. Normal people panic when caught. Elena was calibrating. When were you going to tell me? He asked. I wasn't. The honesty hit harder than a lie. Daniel's mind raced backward through the last year. Her increased travel, the private phone calls, the quiet evenings where she seemed present but slightly elsewhere. How long has this been happening? She met his eyes. Longer than you think. A waiter approached with wine. Neither acknowledged him. Daniel lowered his voice. Is there someone else? A flicker across her expression. Not guilt, not fear. Something closer to disappointment. You're asking the wrong questions. Then she reached into her purse and placed a sealed envelope on the table. I hoped you'd trust me long enough that I could explain this properly. He didn't touch it. What is it? Insurance, she said, for when this moment finally arrived. Daniel suddenly understood one thing with terrifying clarity. His wife had been preparing for this conversation for a very long time. He opened the envelope. Inside was a copy of their marriage certificate, with a yellow tab marking a section he had never paid attention to, a postnuptial amendment, signed 8 years ago. The date made his stomach tighten. The year after his company nearly went bankrupt. I don't remember this, he whispered. You signed a lot of things that year, Elena replied gently. Then she added, you trusted me completely. And for the first time that night, Daniel wondered if that trust had been his first mistake. At the bottom of the document was a clause transferring full financial discretion to Elena in the event of asset protection circumstances. What circumstances? He demanded. Elena's voice dropped almost sympathetically. The ones that are about to happen. They left the restaurant without finishing dinner. In the car, silence pressed against the windows. Streetlights slid across Elena's face in calm intervals. Finally, Daniel snapped. Stop talking like a riddle. What is happening? She exhaled slowly. 3 months ago, your company was flagged for an internal audit. His grip tightened on the wheel. That's routine. It wasn't internal, she said. It was federal. The word hollowed the air. Daniel laughed once, sharp and humorless. That's impossible. Is it? He thought about the aggressive expansion. The creative accounting his CFO insisted was temporary. The deal structures that blurred ethical lines. His chest tightened. You went through my files. I protected our future. He pulled the car to the side of the road. You had no right. Her answer came instantly. I had every right. I'm your wife. Then, quieter, and apparently the only one planning ahead. Daniel stared forward. Are we under investigation? Yes. The world narrowed. How bad? She hesitated. That hesitation said everything. Bad enough that if assets weren't moved, she continued, they would have been frozen. The transfer suddenly looked less like theft and more like strategy. But another question rose immediately. If this was protection, why hide it? Elena looked at him with unsettling steadiness. Because I wasn't protecting you. The word seemed to echo inside the car. I was protecting myself. When they reached home, Elena didn't go inside. Instead, she walked toward the guest house. Where are you going? Daniel asked. There's something you need to see. Inside, the space had been transformed into a quiet office. Files stacked with surgical precision. Color-coded tabs. Legal folders. Financial ledgers. Evidence of years of preparation. You built a command center? He asked faintly. I built clarity. She handed him a folder labeled Contingency Timeline. Daniel flipped it open. Entries dated back nearly a decade. Risk assessments. Market exposure. Personal liability projections. And notes written in Elena's unmistakable handwriting. One line froze him. Daniel's optimism may eventually become our greatest vulnerability. You were analyzing me, he whispered. I was understanding patterns. He felt suddenly observed, as if their entire marriage had been a study. Then he saw another folder, marked simply, Exit Conditions. His pulse thundered. You plan to leave? I plan not to drown with you if the ship sank. The metaphor landed with brutal clarity. He looked up. When did you decide I was a risk? She didn't hesitate. The second time you said, don't worry, it'll work out. He sank into a chair. You could talk to me. I tried, she said softly. You called it negativity. A memory surfaced, arguments dismissed, warnings brushed aside. He had always framed himself as the visionary, Elena as the cautious one. Now caution looked disturbingly close to foresight. Then he found the final tab. Execution, week 42. Execution of what? Elena met his gaze. The separation. The word didn't feel real. You're divorcing me? No, she said calmly. I already filed. The papers were dated 6 weeks earlier. Daniel's hands trembled. You've been living with me, planning this? I've been giving you time, she corrected. Time for what? For you to notice something was wrong. A silence stretched. You never did. The realization cut deeper than the divorce. When were you going to tell me? After the final transfer. He laughed weakly. You choreographed the end of our marriage. I stabilized the landing. The phrasing was surgical, detached. Was any of it real? He asked quietly. Her expression softened for the first time. All of it was real. Then she added, but love doesn't require self-destruction. Daniel leaned forward. Tell me one thing honestly. If I hadn't seen that notification, how long would you have stayed? Elena thought about it. Until the investigation became public. He closed his eyes. You were going to disappear. I was going to survive. Then she delivered a sentence that shattered whatever illusion remained. You were never meant to come with me. Days later, Daniel's attorney called. Not about the divorce. About something else. Elena didn't just move liquid funds, the lawyer said carefully. She transferred property titles, intellectual rights. Even a vacation house is under a trust. Daniel felt dizzy. How is that legal? You signed the amendment. But this scale? Daniel, she executed it flawlessly. There was admiration in the lawyer's voice. A cold understanding crept in. This wasn't a reaction. It was a long game. That night, unable to sleep, Daniel opened the contingency binder again. This time he noticed something he'd missed. A small note tucked inside the earliest section, dated 11 years ago, before their wedding. Daniel believes risk is courage. I believe risk is math. His breath caught. She had known who he was before she married him. Another document slid loose from the back cover, a letter addressed to him. He unfolded it slowly. If you are reading this, it means the future unfolded exactly as the data predicted. I didn't marry you expecting failure. I married you knowing I could not control it. So I prepared. Prepared. Not feared. prepared. He sank into the chair as the final understanding surfaced. Elena hadn't been reacting to danger. She had married with an exit strategy already designed. The investigation broke 2 weeks later. Fraud charges, asset freezes, media coverage. Daniel watched it unfold from a near-empty house. But one detail stunned him more than the headlines. Elena wasn't mentioned anywhere. She had legally separated finances just before the freeze window. Untouchable, clean. When they met one last time to finalize the divorce, he asked a question that had been haunting him. "Did you ever actually trust me?" She considered it carefully. "I trusted your ambition. I just didn't trust where it would eventually lead." He swallowed. "So you built a lifeboat before the storm existed?" Elena shook her head gently. "No, before you even noticed the clouds." As she stood to leave, Daniel asked, "Do you regret any of it?" She paused at the door. "Yes." Hope flickered briefly. "I regret that you never learned to see risk the way I did." Then she walked out, not like someone escaping a disaster, but like someone who had calculated every step years in advance, and simply arrived at the future she had already prepared for. Trust is powerful, but unchecked trust can become blindness. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come from cruelty. It comes from someone choosing survival when they see a collapse you refuse to acknowledge. Ask yourself, would you recognize the warning signs, or only understand them after everything was already gone? If you're drawn to stories that reveal what people are truly capable of under pressure, subscribe, because the next story goes even deeper into the psychology of trust, power, and deception.